I was amazed when I found out recently that the SAT that I took in high school has now gotten rid of America's founding documents as one of the things that they are testing for. Think about it. No longer questions about the Constitution, about the Federalist Papers, about the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence. And they did it because, quote, they said it wasn't necessary for college or career readiness. Think about that. The idea that knowing about what rights you have, what rights are endowed by our awesome creator, the vigorous debates that took place about federalism in the early days, those are somehow not relevant to your role as an American citizen.
This is a brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble. This guy was in the room where it happened. He was with DOGE, with Elon, with Trump. He's also, I think, kind of a new, I don't want to say the father of debate, but let's just say he is a champion of free, true, open debate. He's also starting a fund you can invest in that does not invest in, quote, woke companies, DEI-based hiring companies. You'll get an explanation for all of this. It's not just a virtue signal, folks. This is legitimate data. You're going to want to hear it. James Fishback is a Renaissance man. He's our guest next. James, it's good to see you again. I haven't seen you for a while, and a lot has transpired in your life and in the life of this country since you and I last spoke. Let's start with a post you recently put up about the Fed. You said, time to DOGE the Fed. What are you proposing?
Well, great to see you, Michelle. DOGE was the most ambitious effort in a generation to go in there, and by there, I mean government, and find out exactly what the heck is going on. I mean, we successfully did that at USAID. As you'll remember and your viewers will know, it turns out we were sending $20 million for an Iraqi version of Sesame Street that wasn't doing a whole lot of good, given the fact that there were recurring terrorist attacks there every couple of weeks. We sent $2 million to Mozambique for circumcisions for some reason, $400,000 to Colombia for a transgender opera, which aside from the moral degeneracy of that, it turns out it was also very poorly rated, as I heard from folks on the ground. My mother is
shocking.
Colombian. Shocking.
Yeah, your mom is from Colombia, right? Some of the stories that we tell on this podcast could keep you awake at night, but here's what you can do to help. It's called Sleep Cream. Sleep, CREME.com. It's an all-natural CBD-based topical that you put right on your skin at bedtime. I usually put it on the insides of my forearms, maybe the bottoms of my feet, and they smell fantastic. While the lavender is my favorite, they have a new rose-scented one out that is Sleep Cream Rose. It's awesome. But here's the best part. It works. And if it doesn't work for you, just let them know, and they'll give you your money back within the first 30 days. That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee. Sleep Cream, sleep, CREME.com. Use the code HOMERUN at checkout to get free standard shipping on your first order. That's the code HOMERUN at checkout for free standard shipping on your first order. If you want to sleep better, use what I use. That is Sleep Cream. Sleep, CREME.com, sleepcream.com. Your mom is from Colombia, right?
She is. And so not a very good production, aside from the issues with it, of course, that we all know. So why do I bring this up? Because that's what was done with USAID, is pop open the hood, peel back the onion, and deliver a real accountable mechanism so the American people can see what's actually going on. Done at USAID, done at large parts of the federal government because of the DOGE effort. It's time to do that at the Fed now. We have a Fed that is highly politicized. The best way to know that, by the way, is that Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, cut rates right before the 2024 election by 50 points. Michelle, that would be the largest cut in 5 years. And he won't cut rates now, even though inflation is lower today than it was when he cut by 50.
And we know for a fact that Jerome Powell is no fan of Donald Trump, correct?
He is no fan of Donald Trump. In fact, James O'Keefe has published video of one of Jerome Powell's principal economists exactly saying that Powell hates Trump. And again, we don't have to speculate on the vagueness of this. Let's just not forget that in the 2020 election, 90 cents of every dollar that Fed employees donated went to Democrats. 97 cents of every dollar. For every one Republican economist who works at the Federal Reserve, there are 10 Democrat economists. If any other organization had that kind of one-sidedness, we would call them out for it. And when Harvard does, for example, in these big Ivy League institutions, we see the ideological rot, the mind virus that takes over, this obsession to oppose anything that's good for the country simply because President Trump would also benefit from it.
Yeah, we can point at the media as well. There are a number of institutions. You wouldn't expect it at the Fed, however. You'd expect, you know what? Why should we expect more? I mean, this is the Fed.
It's the Fed, but I think I certainly don't remember it personally, but speaking to my grandparents, my own parents, the gas lines of the 70s, the high inflation of the early 80s, it took a real patriot, a real free thinker by the name of Paul Volcker to come in there. And contrary to what the political environment said, I need to raise rates to break the back of inflation so this does not become a more vicious force and really erode the purchasing power of Americans. And he did that to his credit. And so we think of the Fed as this storied, apolitical institution. In fact, will counter the politics, Michele, to do what's right. Powell is countering the politics, i.e. Donald Trump, to do what is wrong. And what does that mean for your viewers? It means that interest rates are near 20-year highs, even though inflation is near a 4-year low, even though we've had back to back better than expected inflation readings, even though the credit card rates are near 25-year highs. It's impossible to get out of a mortgage and to get into a new one, or to get into a new one for the very first time. And so when we talk about a lot of the issues that you have so smartly touched on in your show, the demographic issues, family formation, the soul of our nation, really being on the precipice here, that all comes back to our ability to start a life, to start a home, to start a family. And we can't do that if interest rates are near 20-year highs. President Trump has been insanely successful. Look at the investments that have come into the country. Inflation has come down. Look at the immigration policy that was hurting Americans, our safety, our housing markets, taking away our jobs. But the final key in unlocking what the president has called the golden age is to bring interest rates to a more normal level. And that's what DOGE the Fed is really about. Go in there, audit,
if you were to go in
on
there and peel back the layers of the onion, as you suggest, what do you suspect you'd find?
That's a good question. I think you'd find a couple of things. I think you'd find research that is very one-sided, that doesn't take into account alternative scenarios that would be beneficial to, dare I say, Donald Trump, that would be beneficial to Republicans. And so it's very easy, Michele, to say, all right, well, the staff has prepared 3 forecasts. So we are independent. We prepared 3 forecasts. Well, if in all 3 of those forecasts, tariffs are highly inflationary, majorly inflationary, and bigly inflationary, and you actually haven't prepared a forecast that reflects the real range of possible outcomes. And the truth is that not only have tariffs not been inflationary, is that there's no real research or evidence that a one-time increase in tariffs leads to a long-term sustained increase in inflation. So the Fed's current posture negates that. And I guess the bigger point here is when I say DOGE the Fed, I also mean to audit their decisions. So there's a way that really the Fed's job could be done by a computer. You put in different inputs. What is inflation today? What was it 6 months ago? Where are housing prices? Where is nominal GDP growth, the unemployment rate? And that computer will spit out where the federal funds rate, that's the interest rate that the Fed sets 8 times a year, where that federal funds rate would be. And if there is a meaningful deviation between what Too Late is doing and what the accurate computer is putting out there are real questions about that. And that's to the detriment of the American people. And so I think sunlight, of course, is the best disinfectant. And to DOGE the Fed is to really just open the thing up and let the people see what's actually going on. We have a meeting here, by the way, at the end of the month, the July Federal Reserve meeting. This is where Too Late is likely once again going to refuse to look at the evidence and lower interest rates. I'm calling on the Fed to make that meeting open to the public. Let's put a live stream up. The Fed never does this. You know, Michele, the Fed's transcripts of their meeting, the words spoken, the discussions had, come out 5 years after the meeting takes place. And so it won't be until June, July of 2030 that until we know what actually went down at the meeting later this month. That is an abomination.
Yeah, how do they get away with that?
Well, they claim that they need to have the political room and the political independence to not be influenced by decisions. But by doing that, by saying that, they're of course allowing themselves to be wholly unaccountable
Yeah,
to elected leaders and to the American people. The
yeah.
truth is that if Donald Trump does a bad job, I don't think he will, but if he does a bad job, he will get fired. Not him necessarily, but the Republicans in the 26 midterms. He will get fired. He will be held accountable. If Secretary Scott Bessent does a bad job, he's doing a great job, he will be let go by the president. If heaven forbid, Michele, if you or I do a bad job in our careers, there are folks who will hold us accountable until we do a good job, or we will be let go, right?
Correct.
You have it with your folks on your side. I have it with my investors on my side. But the truth is, there's no one who can hold Jerome accountable. There's literally no legal mechanism by which to let this guy go, because in the name of political independence, Jerome Powell has become independent of all accountability, and that is wrong.
It's fascinating. So, James, I want to know how you got involved with Doge to begin with. This was the baby originally of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, and you and Vivek have a lot in common. I think in many ways. You're both really, really, really smart guys, and you both present arguments incredibly well. But how did you get drawn in?
I got drawn in really two ways. I got drawn in first to the mission, the work, the vision of Doge, which was to make government more responsible, more transparent, and more efficient, to work better for the people. They sent their money to DC to be used wisely and respectfully and not to be squandered. Right. So that was really, and I've always had this desire to do that. It's sort of a libertarian instinct of mine, even though I wouldn't necessarily call myself a libertarian. But the second is that I've developed a great relationship with Vivek, with the president over the last year or so, and worked closely on Vivek's campaign as an advisor, and then, of course, supporting the president through the general, and proud to do so. And then the opportunity came about to do some advisory work for Doge at the outset. You'll remember, of course, the Doge dividend check, the idea that
was
whatever
your
Doge,
idea.
It was. And, I got to say that the president really deserves credit for championing the idea. I think we will actually see it at some point. Obviously, there's political priorities here and now. The president is right to prioritize no tax on tip, no tax on overtime, and the funding for the border and the big, beautiful bill. The idea, Michele, with the Doge dividend was that 20% of whatever Doge saved, whatever waste, fraud, and abuse they identified, 20% would go back to the very people who sent that money to DC in the first place, the taxpayers. And the idea was twofold. When you buy something, when you buy a good or service and you pay for it, and it isn't what you thought it was, and you were lied to or it was squandered, then you deserve a refund. You deserve restitution.
Sure.
And so we can do that. And then, of course, the symbolism, which you can appreciate, the idea that for the first time in America's 250 years, the government admits they kind of made a mistake, and we're going to refund you some of that. I mean, the symbolism is unbelievably powerful because it takes that social contract between the government and her people and totally revives it. This idea that I'm accountable to you, you're accountable to me. If you mess up on your taxes, if we do, we get a call from the IRS and we're expected to chip in a little bit more. And when the government messes up on its budget, we should get a letter in the mail and a check in the mail that says, here's what went wrong, here's 20% back, and we look forward to doing right by you and your family going forward.
It's a fascinating thought. It's an incredible notion. You mentioned Vivek, you mentioned Trump. The name you left out here was Elon Musk. And I'd love to pull back the curtain a little bit on what happened here, because Elon with the chainsaw, he was right there. He was the head of Doge. Yeah. I mean, really. And there's been this tremendous falling out, and he's posted recently on X, some credit to the president when the president has done things well, but it seems as though there's really been a breakup, a divorce, and Elon has said, "Hey, look, if you guys vote in this big beautiful bill, I'm going to primary every one of you that signs on to this," and you have said, if Elon does that, I'm going to counter him with a pack of my own. Where is the genesis of this fracture?
Well, the genesis is really two different visions for America. I mean, and this is nothing new, right, Michele? I mean, we go back to the 1780s, the Federalist Papers, right? These vigorous debates in public between leaders of our country. Elon Musk is a leader, no doubt, in the private sector. I run Azoria, an investment firm. Tesla is by far our largest position because we believe in a future that is powered by electric vehicles, powered by robotaxis, autonomous driving, and AI. And he's doing that with Tesla, of course, doing it with SpaceX as well. President Trump is the leader that we need in the public sector when it comes to making peace and securing the border and lowering taxes and doing all that great stuff. And so these two men are not all that far apart in their visions. There's different ways to get there. And that's where I think the real disagreement is. But this really broke down, as your viewers may know, last month when Elon expressed real frustration right after Trump dismissed who Elon really wanted to be the head of NASA. Of course, you could imagine why that might be frustrating, and not even in a malicious way, right? I mean, NASA's partnered with SpaceX. SpaceX is a visionary company, the only company on planet Earth that is doing something that was truly inconceivable just 5-10 years ago, which was to use and reuse rockets. SpaceX will go to Mars. There's no question about that. SpaceX is the only reason why we were able to rescue those stranded astronauts that Boeing left up there earlier this year. And so, I mean, Elon is doing incredible work. There's no question about that. The question is, on this big, beautiful bill, and again, Elon's dismissal of it came right after Trump dismissed Jarek Eisman, who was going to be Elon's pick for NASA. So
we do think that's the major impetus for him, for Elon.
Yeah, I think that was definitely the proximate cause. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. But Elon is very much a one-man show. I know that, having spent time with him. It's an Elon Musk show when he's in the room, and then, as you could imagine, when Donald Trump's in the room, it is a Donald Trump show. There's competition there, and at the end of the day, if Elon wants to prioritize getting the national debt down to zero or getting to a balanced budget as quickly as possible, I want that for our country too. I know that you do as well.
Absolutely.
But that cannot come at the expense of border security. Let's be clear about the big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill makes $1.2 trillion in cuts that otherwise would not have happened. $1.2 trillion over the next decade, Michele. That is the biggest spending cut in history. On top of that, it makes a one-time $100 million investment in border security. That's new ICE agents, Border Patrol agents, fortifying the border, not just with physical barriers, but through a technological barrier. Companies like Matroid that are powering AI vision on the border to detect cars and individuals that may be containing fentanyl, which is killing 200 people every single day in our country, bringing in criminals into our country, and so on. That's what the big, beautiful bill does. And so if you're against that, then you are inadvertently for a continued weak border. I don't think Elon Musk is for that. And so I've really tried to come to terms with him on this, is that I just don't think that you and the president are that far apart. If we were having a debate, Michele, let's say you and I were going to get a beach house for the weekend, and I said to you, well, there's a risk that some critters might break in and eat up Michelle's heels. And what I suggest doing is we put a little chicken wire, and you say, well, no, James, we can't afford the chicken wire. That's going to be $23. And I say, but Michele, those Louboutins that you have are $650, right? Michele, you see what I'm saying here, right?
I don't own a single pair of Louboutins.
But you get the idea, right? Just for dramatic effect. It wouldn't be as powerful, Michele, if I said, the pair of, the ones that were found off the Goodwill rack on the weekend, although those are probably very high quality. I think the Louboutins are very overpriced. But the idea is spend a little bit of money to save a lot of money. And if we're going to spend $100 billion one time to truly, unequivocally seal the border shut, and then to continue the mass deportation policy, let's not forget that actually saves money because illegal immigration is estimated to cost the country, i.e. the taxpayers, upwards of $150 billion a year. And we know that innately to be true. Think of all of the hospital beds, the emergency room space that's being taken up by folks who just got to the country 2 weeks ago. They aren't paying for that health care. Think of housing prices in communities having gone up because people got housing vouchers and social welfare benefits.
That border investment isn't the only thing Elon is arguing with, right? He's just arguing with any spending at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he said, right? I mean, so right. And so when he's saying he's against the spending, I just want to break down where that spending is actually coming from. There's also an increase for FAA spending. Why? Because I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. I'm about 300 feet from the Potomac, where 67 of our countrymen were killed when a Black Hawk helicopter collided with an American Airlines
There
flight.
is no question we've got to invest in
We've got to invest in that.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And so that's not pork. And so when Elon says this is a pork-filled bill, I've literally asked him, Michele, directly. I've said, what pork are you referring to? Be precise. And he has completely dodged that question. And so I reiterate here, for anybody who thinks that there is real pork, and I can understand why, Michele, why people would think that, because Democrats and Republicans alike for the last 25 years have told us we have to pass this bill or that bill. And if we don't, the whole country is going to fall apart. And it turns out the money was being sent to Colombia for the transgender opera and to Iraq for the Sesame Street. But I tell you, as someone who's been perennially skeptical of big bills in Washington, this bill is unlike anything you've seen. It is a landmark piece of legislation the president has gotten over the line, and we ought to support it. And the idea, by the way, that Elon Musk, instead of calling up the president of the United States, instead of having a reasoned public debate where the best argument wins, we can talk about incubate in a second, and instead of doing that, Michele, what he's done is threaten the president, make unbelievable accusations about the president and his character, and now threaten to sabotage not just the president, but the 80 million people who voted for him by creating this spoiler party. And make no mistake, it will be a spoiler party that would hurt the president and take him out of power in the midterms.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And what we have seen from Elon over the decades and what's been documented about Elon is he has these outbursts. And so, you kind of now start to go, well, which is the outburst and which is the real Elon? And if he's going to have these sort of, these posts about Epstein Island and the rest, he's lost some credibility, and I think he's losing credibility on both sides, which is unfortunate. I'd still hope he makes a good car in the future.
He will, and I'll just say, to defend my friend for just a second, I drive the car. It's unbelievable. I really should say, Michele, that it drives me, because I haven't touched the steering wheel. Truly, I have not touched it in months. I go in there, I punch in the destination, turn on FSD, full self-driving, and it takes me to my destination, even if that's hundreds of miles away. There's two things here. Elon has absolutely lost credibility in Washington and with the American people. No question about it. I don't actually think he's lost credibility with respect to delivering a robotaxi and with delivering SpaceX rockets that land and refuel and get reused. And so he could lose all the political credibility he wants, and I'm actually happy that he has, because he shouldn't have really had any in the first place. And the second is he can still maintain that real technological credibility on Tesla and SpaceX. As we speak, there are 30 robotaxis, 30 Model Y Tesla robotaxis in Austin that are picking up passengers and dropping them off with no one in the driver's seat. He has real credibility in the tech and AI space, and that's going to continue. And I wish he would focus entirety of his time on that.
It's fascinating what you just said. You don't mind that he has lost credibility in the political sphere because he shouldn't have had it in the first place, but he did. And he supported this president, and he financially, and he was present at every rally, the convention, all that. So why shouldn't he have had that credibility in the first place, James? I mean, that's a strong statement in the political.
It is a strong statement. It is a really strong statement. And what I mean to say by that is, I say that he should not have had the credibility in hindsight. For Elon Musk to say that he is the reason, he said this, Michele, that he is the reason that Donald Trump won, is, forget how Donald Trump might feel about that. One, it's not true. But think about how the voters, the folks who knocked on doors, the people who went to the rallies, the people who tried to convince their reluctant cousin, in my case, to punch that ticket for President Trump.
Mhm.
That's an insult. It's also just factually untrue. Kamala Harris outspent Donald Trump by $300 million,
Yeah,
Hillary Clinton by $500 million.
it's
Donald
insane.
Trump won the popular vote, the electoral vote in all 7 swing states
Yeah,
because of him. And then he
yeah.
came into office and secured the border because of him. He's delivered $8 trillion in new investments in the country, from OpenAI to NVIDIA to Foxconn, because of him. And so, President Reagan said it best: you'd be surprised at how much you can get done if you don't worry about who gets the credit. I
Mhm.
don't see President Trump actively trying to seek credit for things. To the extent that the media and the public and the voters are giving him credit, it's because he deserves it. But Elon, for him to come out and say, no, the voters didn't give Trump that victory, I did, that is, one, factually wrong, and two, it's an insult to our democratic way of life that somehow you can buy an election for people. And so I would have wished, now in hindsight, it doesn't appear to be the case, that Elon supported this president for the right reasons, reasons that you did and I did and so many other people out there really, really supported him for. It looks like, to tell you the truth, it was largely a financial transaction, one that he was hoping the president would, in Elon's mind, hold up his end of the bargain. With Trump, there is no bargain. This is not a transactional president. There is no buying President Trump. And when Elon didn't get his pick for NASA, and then furthermore didn't get his EV tax credits, that appears to have been the last straw. And that's why you're seeing this threat of a new political party when this one big, beautiful bill passes.
It's a fascinating time to be alive. I say it every day, every day. All right, the Azoria 500 Meritocracy ETF. July 8th, the big day that this began. What is this?
This is the answer to something that Americans really don't know they have a problem with, which is that your S&P 500 ETF, whether that's BlackRock, Vanguard, or State Street, is holding you back. There are 500 stocks in there, but there are 37 that impose DEI hiring targets. Companies like Nike that say that 35% of their entire corporate workforce has to be ethnically and racially diverse. Companies like Intel that are targeting female representation at 25%, even if it means forcing not yet qualified folks into those roles. Now, this is a moral failure. Yes, no one in America needs to cheat their way to a job. Every American is capable of greatness, and no one needs a handout. And to say so is really an insult to their individual achievement. It's a moral failure, yes, Michele, but it's also a financial failure. Research that we've just published from Azoria has found that companies with DEI hiring targets have underperformed the stock market by 19 percentage points. And
That's
so when
crazy.
folks, it's insane, right? And so when you have an S&P 500 ETF that owns those 37 stocks that have underperformed by 19 percentage points, your portfolio is being dragged down by them. So our solution at Azoria, and it's publicly available at any US brokerage, the same place you might buy Apple stock, or I hope Tesla stock as well, is something called SPXM. That's the ticker. And very simply what it does is it buys the top 500 stocks in America, with the exception of the 37 that hire on race and gender. And our investment thesis is very simple. Companies that hire on skill and talent will be more successful than those that hire on
So
race and
this is
gender.
not just what folks might interpret as virtue signaling or putting pressure on companies, although it may do that
It very
on
well may.
companies to abandon DEI. We would hope so, because I'm with you on this. Uh,
Yeah.
Everyone in this country has a gift and a talent, and they need to be empowered to go get that, not told that they are oppressed. Okay, so I scream that from the rooftops till the day I die. But you're actually saying not only is this a statement, and beyond that, this is with research to back it up and data to back it
Right.
up. This is financially more sound. It is remarkable to me. What do you attribute that 19%
Yeah.
underperformance?
That is the real driver here, is what is exactly behind that. We've identified 3 mechanisms that we think have really driven that gap between stocks that hire on merit and stocks that don't. And if you're hiring on DEI, you're not hiring on merit, very simply. There are 3. The first is it forces companies, it prevents them from hiring the best. I'll just give you an example. When you have a DEI hiring target like Nike does that says that 35% of your workforce has to be ethnically diverse, and you have a Jewish applicant apply, that applicant isn't going to get the same screen time, face time, and priority as another applicant who happens to meet that ethnic, racial, arbitrary category. And so what ends up happening, Michele, is that highly qualified candidates who are conveniently not diverse enough, white Americans, Jewish Americans, Asian Americans, they don't get the ability to compete fairly for those same jobs. And you end up preventing folks from hiring the best talent. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, not hiring one Jewish worker, not hiring one Asian worker is a travesty for them. But to be completely honest, it's going to be largely trivial for that company. Now, imagine compounding and making that decision hundreds or even thousands of times over the course of 5 years, which is how long the Nike DEI target has been in place. What that does to performance. Think about how many great employees with great ideas and great synergies and great collaboration between new and existing workers that never gets to happen. That's all downstream. A company's stock performance is all downstream of its people. Extraordinary companies are run by extraordinary people. And so when you compromise that, that's what happens. The second mechanism, very quickly, Michele, is it forces companies to hire employees who are not yet qualified. And so when you have, as Intel does, a target that says that 25% has to be female, what it forces the company to do is say, to meet that target, we may have to hire workers who just aren't lined up with the skills that we need right here, right now. And by the way,
because we got to meet a quota, and we may not have that universe of talent available yet. But shoot, we got to meet a quota.
We got to meet the quota, so we have to do what we have to do. We have to lower the standard and bring in people who are not yet qualified. I want to be clear for a second. 25%, 50% women, 70% women, that might sound great. You want gender parity. I got to tell you the truth, though. Gender parity is anti-meritocratic. If all the women who apply are highly qualified and none of the men are, you know who you hire, right, Michele?
You hire the women.
You hire all the women. And I think in the same vein, if none of the women are qualified and all the men are qualified, then you know who we have to hire. And so we're not going to break the glass ceiling, Michele, by increasing it a little bit and fixing it at 25 or 50%, which is what gender parity is. This idea of gender parity, there have to be exactly 50% women. That robs the other 50% of women who may be extraordinarily qualified.
That's a great point.
And I wouldn't want my mom to be the 51st woman in that hiring pool that says, you know what? My mom's name is Ide. Ide, you can't be hired because guess what? We already hit our quota and we hit gender parity. And so it's not clear whether these are actually just floors or ceilings. And so when you force in the not yet qualified, you end up, of course, incurring all sorts of cost, higher cost to train them. They slow things down. They mess things up. Just because, again, they're not yet qualified. And the last thing, and this is what really blew us away, and I know that you'll really appreciate this point, is it fuels workplace strife and takes down belonging. What is belonging? Belonging is a term that I think we've surrendered to the left, and we shouldn't, because belonging is really a fundamental aspect of dignity. We all deserve the dignity, Michele, of knowing that we and our colleagues are there because we earned it and not because we were exploited by some corporate boardroom that wanted to use us to meet their arbitrary self-imposed target. And so when people start to question whether or not they're there for the right reasons, and even more insidiously, whether the people that work with them are there for the right reasons, that lowers workplace belonging, which the Harvard Business Review, of all places, found that when you decrease workplace belonging, guess what happens? You increase sick days, you lower productivity, and you decrease the amount of output at a company. And so you could imagine, right? If you and I are working together and we got a great relationship, we're going to have great work, we're going to show up to work on time, we're going to give it our all. But if I'm constantly doubting you and you're constantly doubting me, and again, that's not just two people, that's being compounded across a company with 30, 40,000 employees, that really does lower productivity relative to its potential. And so for those three reasons, we think you can explain the 19% gap between the DEI 37, we're calling them, and the Azoria and the S&P 500. And that's why we've created the Azoria 500 as a way to, for the first time ever, exclude companies that, yes, are doing something that is morally repugnant, but more importantly, I think for folks, doing something that is financially destructive. And no one until now has actually quantified that. And that's why we launched this new ETF called SPXM.
SPXM, it's fascinating, and I love the examples. Listen, the New England Patriots won all those championships because a couple things. Tom Brady forced everyone to rise to his level,
Yeah.
and so did Bill Belichick, and so did Robert Kraft. And they didn't just bring guys in because they liked them. They brought in players who could help them win.
Right.
I would say too, on Sunday night and Monday Night Football, I was the only female on the broadcast team. I wasn't there because I was a female, because they could have gotten a lot prettier, skinnier models than me. I was there because I worked my ass off, and every single person on that crew, every one of them, worked their ass off. Male, female, it didn't matter. That was not the standard by which we brought people in. So if you're willing to work hard, and I know a lot of women in sports television, behind the camera, in front of the camera, who work exceedingly hard. So I can tell you unequivocally, they're not there because they're women. They're there because they are exceptional talents. It's good stuff. And I love the way that you present arguments. And so we got to touch real quickly on Incubate Debate, which is why we had you on many times before. It's this fabulous debate organization that you have created. For people who missed those previous episodes, give them the Reader's Digest, is that even a thing anymore, version of what Incubate Debate is.
Absolutely. Incubate Debate is America's fastest growing debate league. We host free tournaments for students all over the country, middle and high school students, where they debate timely and timeless issues. We just had our national tournament, Michele, where we had students from 10 states come debate whether DOGE should be disbanded, whether the Department of Education should be shut down, whether mass deportations are in fact sound policy. And it was incredible to see students not just debate, but actually change their mind one way or the other as they participated in the great act of debate. And why did I start Incubate? Really two reasons. High school debate changed my life 15 years ago. I was a kid with a stutter, and it turns out being forced to debate every other weekend will help you overcome that stutter, will also help you learn about a whole range of viewpoints and a whole range of issues. But high school debate changed for the worst. I graduated high school 2013, came back to coach high school debate in 2017. And in those just 4 years, it became something that looked radically different from when I left. You had high school debate judges, Michele, you and I have talked about this, telling students that if they argued that Israel had a right to defend itself, they would lose. If they argued that capitalism...
If you argue this, you will lose. I'm
you will
a judge.
Lose, no questions
I'm
asked.
telling you right now, if you take that opinion, you will lose.
You will lose.
It's freaking criminal.
It is criminal. And it turns out that the organization behind it, the National Speech and Debate Association, effectively the National Football League for high school debate, the national governing body, they took no issue with this. I put this out on the Free Press in a 2-part series as a former high school debater who had the receipts, who published the verbatim statements that these judges were telling students on their online portal before the debates began. And the National Speech and Debate Association did absolutely nothing. And so it got to the point where we had to really double down on the Incubate effort to give folks an alternative. It isn't enough to wag our finger and say the other side is doing something wrong. We have to give Americans an outlet, an alternative where they can do what they want to do, which is meritocratic, free speech, open debate. And that's what we've done at Incubate. And we had Vivek Ramaswamy, Bill de Blasio, Neil Gorsuch, Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, come out and speak with our students. We are radically free speech, radically passionate about open debate, and our students are too.
That's where you really proved yourself. When you brought in de Blasio and Doug Emhoff, you showed that we are going to coach you to debate from all points of view. I mean, it's so laudable. I love it. People should check it out. If you've got a high schooler who's interested in debating, this is where you need to be, where debate is actually free. And it's not, I'm amazed that this NSDA still exists, and have they corrected any of their course?
Well, no, no, not at all. In fact, the judge that was most alarming was named Lila Lavender, and Lila Lavender's online judge
Mhm.
profile, I kid you not, said, "quote I am a Marxist Leninist Maoist, and I cannot check that at the door. Therefore, if you make the following arguments, capitalism good, Israel good, police good, you will automatically lose." That judge judged 12 high school debate tournaments this past school year. That's all you need to know about the
That's
NSDA
all
and
you
their
need to
priorities,
know.
right? That they are
Oh,
letting
Lila
someone,
Lavender.
and by the way, it would be just as appalling if they let a guy named James Fishback judge. I would never do this, but said, "I'm a MAGA Republican, and if you make the following positions, that Zoran would be good, or that BDS, or I mean,
Yeah.
whatever the case is, that is wrong." That would be just as appalling to have a Republican say, "I'm going to use my politics and I'm going to make sure that you automatically lose, and I cannot check my politics at the door."
So
That is
people,
wrong.
it is wrong, it is criminal, and people, if you don't think kids are being indoctrinated, there's your proof that in order to win a debate competition, they must adhere to the beliefs and side with the beliefs of someone they may not agree with, or they're being forced to agree with. It is mind-blowing, it is mind-boggling. I am so grateful to you. What's amazing to me, James, and I just learned this recently, people may hear you speak and they go, wow, he overcame a stutter. Wow, he's got this investment company. He worked with DOGE, and you dropped out of Georgetown, man. That is a power move. How long were you
Yeah,
there?
I was there for 2 years. In hindsight, I dropped out, but I really just left because I thought I was going to come back. I left. I started a company at the time. And so I did that and thought, hey, if this is successful, great. If not, likely chance it wasn't going to be. It turned out to be, which was nice, but that I could just come back. So it was in my mind, I billed it to my parents as a gap year. Right now, we're going on over a gap decade, but
Okay.
we'll see. My mom tries to get me to go back every so often, but I think that the everyone talks about college, and I love what the University of Austin is doing. But I got to tell you the truth, Michele. I think if we're going to save America, we've got to save middle and high school. And
Hmm.
that isn't just with school choice. That is so important. We've got to also make sure that our public schools are being held to that high standard that
Yeah.
Tom Brady and Rob Kraft did at the Patriots. But also, we've got to make sure that our standardized tests are being held to a high standard. And I was amazed when I found out recently that the SAT that I took in high school has now gotten rid of America's founding documents as one of the things that they are testing for. Think about it. No longer questions about the Constitution, about the Federalist Papers, about the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence. And they did it because, quote, they said it wasn't necessary for college or career readiness. Think about that. The idea that knowing about what rights you have, what rights are endowed by our awesome creator, the vigorous debates that took place about federalism in the early days, those are somehow not relevant to your role as an American citizen. And we got to reject that because,
Yeah.
as much as there's this issue of teaching to the test, there's real truth to that. What you tell students is going to be on the test is what they are going to research and respond to. When you tell them that the Constitution is no longer on the test, you are telling them effectively the Constitution no longer matters. And
Right.
that's why I'm excited about programs like the CLT, the Classic Learning Test, that actually does test for the classic documents of this country, that doesn't want to water down the SAT and lower the standards, because that's what is ultimately going to revive America, is the civic patriotism that is rooted in learning about our history, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Right. Amen. Amen. Well, you continue to do yeoman's work on all fronts. James, it's always so good to check in with you. I wish you nothing but the best with all of that you've got going on. Please stay in touch.
Thank you, Michele. Always a pleasure.
I always end the podcast saying be brave and do good. So I would suggest you be brave and do good and look into Incubate Debate. Look into all of these things that force you to think more and and put your own ideas on trial. That's what you got to do. All right, he's James Fishback back. He's James Fishback. I'm Michele Tafoya. We'll see you next time. Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.